Welcome to episode 20 of Authenticity FM, the podcast that dives deep not only into city management, but the people who do the managing. I'm Phil Corri, joined by my good friend and colleague, Dr. Corri Spiegel, and on this episode, we're excited to welcome a special guest, City Manager of Coppell, Texas, and newly minted ICMA President, Mike Land. If you've ever wondered how hedgehogs, playlists, and building community all tie together, you won't want to miss it. We'll see you on the other side. Mike, thank you for joining us. We are so excited to have you here. And we are making some history tonight as we have traded one mic for another, as Mr. Sable is on a brief podcast sabbatical. Don't get nervous. This isn't just an interview. It might be an audition, but you're going to do great. And we're excited to have you here. Thanks. Thanks for joining us.
Yeah, I would love to take that spot. No, I'm teasing. No, it's a pleasure to be here. Thank you for the invitation.
Well, we are so happy to have you join us. Thank you for making the time. I know you are hopping around trying to do what ICMA presidents do, and that is to meet people and to talk to our members and be that advocate that you are so great at. And we're going to talk about that in a little bit. But we always like to just start off by saying, what's your 30-second life story? If you can condense it into 30 seconds, that's an amazing feat. I barely can say my name in 30 seconds. But tell us how you got to being a city manager. What's your story that brought you to that point?
Yeah. The answer to that question is it was not a career that I ever pursued. My background is such that it was in design, it was in fund development, it was in land development, it was in coaching or attempting to be a coach. So all those elements are characteristics that I think I had internally that were driving me. And I had an opportunity to serve as chairman of the Sarasota Affordable Housing Task Force back in the 1980s. And at that time, it gave me a taste of what it's like to sit on a committee, sit on a board, and work for the benefit of the community. So when I was thinking about what was next in my career at the early age in my 30s, I thought, well, what would it be like to sit on the other side of the table? And so I became a planning director in a small community outside of Orlando. And very quickly, my wife tells the story differently than I do. My kindergarten daughter came home and she said she wanted to be a Florida Gator. I said, we are moving back to Texas. My wife and I are both Aggies. And so we came back to Texas, and I started working in Gainesville, Texas. Through some circumstances, I got asked if I would be interested in serving as city manager there. And that was in 1996. And I have served in either city manager's role or assistant city manager's role since that time. So 30 seconds or less.
That was great. I just want to say that was one of the better elevator speeches I've heard in a bit on the podcast. So well done. Well done. You clearly rehearsed. Yeah. I want to just so the audition's going really well so far.
Good. Thank you.
Keep it up. Keep it up.
The only difference is I have a very boring color on, even though this is our swag for.
It's a great color. It's a great color. Yeah.
Well, Mike always wears all those bright, vibrant colors and plaids, and he's got a personality that matches that. Maybe that's what this goes.
So his podcast persona and his board meeting persona are two very different.
Oh, are they really?
Characters. Okay. Yeah, he has a whole wardrobe of Timberwolves apparel.
Oh, okay.
That is typically his podcast stuff.
Okay.
So
right.
Yeah, it's not the pink plaid you're used to or anything fancy like that.
So I'm carrying the flag for I'm carrying the flag for ICMA. So.
You're doing a great job.
I have the ICMA socks on. At least I did this morning, but I stepped outside and it was wet, so I had to change socks.
Yeah, the sock swag game at conferences has been incredibly fascinating. So talk to us about, that was your elevator speech of how you got into local government and service, but you've also been so involved in associations. To get to the seat of ICMA president means you've done 3 years as a regional vice president. I believe you were heavily involved in TCMA. Like, there is a lot of service that is in support of the profession too, that I think is always interesting to hear people, how they got into that and what they've gotten from it.
Well, I view it this way. I've been blessed to be able to do what I do. Like I said, I think this profession found me. I didn't go out searching for it. And it has provided so much for my family. And it has been just an honor to serve other people. And I want to and have always believed in giving back and giving to and mentoring and coaching and reaching out to folks. And then those folks then tell other people who reach out to me. So through my whole career, I have been visiting with young city managers that are just getting started in their tenure, or they've been in that tenure for a while. And so so again, I do things kind of wacky. Back in 2000, I think it was 13, 14, somewhere right around there, I showed up to a professional committee, a development committee meeting for TCMA. I wasn't on the committee, but it was in Frisco, Texas. And I just showed up, and I just kind of started contributing. And so I saw that it was time to, put your name in the hat for running for one of the elected offices. And I think what I did is I went straight to president-elect or something along those lines. I just kind of bypassed whatever route that was supposed to be the traditional route and was selected and became president-elect and, of course, president of TCMA. And it was a great honor. And state of Texas, we're one of the largest states for membership, and our regions, traveling the entire state. It gave me an opportunity to see the differences between the Panhandle and South Texas, between West Texas and East Texas. And while we say this all the time, we all deal with the same issues, streets and water and sewer and everything along those lines. The cultures of the communities are completely different. The cultures of the organizations are completely different. The needs are completely different. And so for me, it was about how do we build an association that not only represents the communities we serve, but supports the professionals in those communities that serve, because they are, they're the ones that really make it hum and make it work. So what do we do? So that was how I got involved, by kind of bypassing a process, getting in, serving in that capacity. Doing some great things, working with great people. Um, and then basically when the ICMA opportunity came up, when it was time, because Texas, had some unique attributes as it relates to ICMA and the Mountain Plains and having a designated seat. Um, at the time that I had put my name in the hat, I don't know if Eric remembered this, but Eric Walsh had just become the city manager in San Antonio, Texas. And so, in essence, he wasn't going to have time to really serve in that capacity as the new city manager in San Antonio. So I guess by default, I don't know, I became the Texas representative on the board. And, our group, I collectively call our group the COVID babies, because our service was the 3 years that were interrupted by COVID. So it was really completely different years of service. And then the opportunity, because of the way ICMA works, you have to, set off a year. And I actually interviewed the same year that Tanya did. And Tanya was selected, and which, this past year, she did a phenomenal job. I'm so thankful for what she's done. And so when I interviewed, again, there was no one interviewing against me. So either I screwed up the interview or the board was going to select me. So by default, I became the president-elect of ICMA. So I guess you could say it's been kind of a blessed walk as I've gone through and served the associations.
Mike, I like to say that none of that ever happens by accident. Things align in the way that they're supposed to align. And when things don't happen, it's because they're not supposed to, because they're supposed to happen another time. And I think that progression through TCMA and ICMA and now to where you are right now very clearly had reason, purpose, and logic behind it. You just didn't see it in that moment. I will say the TCMA story makes me giggle, because sometimes the people who find themselves in leadership positions are the ones who weren't listening when they said whatever it was that they were saying. And it's like, oh yeah, everybody who really wants to be in this role, you should stay in this room afterwards. And that was the time you were checking your email on your phone,
right.
and you're sitting in the room after, and suddenly you're the president-elect of TCMA.
Right.
But I mean, I understand from your vantage point, this perspective of service, right? This perspective of the opportunity to be in a space where you are listening and advocating for and seeking to help the members, whether it's TCMA or now ICMA, to deal with what it is that they're working through. Right? There's a lot going on in our profession right now, and I
Right.
think the listeners are sometimes the ones that are most underrepresented, and being able to be the one who says, look, I'm here, I want to help, I want to be the person who you feel like you can share this information with, so maybe I can take that information and use it to help you. That very much seems like your ethos from the standpoint of and you and I have only had the chance to meet one another a few times, but in the conversations that we've had and in um, your address to the ICMA membership when you became president back in October in Tampa, you're very much embracing kind of this members matter mentality
Right.
that we've really seen ICMA take up the mantle on. Talk to us a little bit about, kind of how you approach it and how maybe that got its foundations in TCMA.
Yeah. I'll use stories to tell you. As I've traveled from state to state and visited with members, I've come across members that have had some challenges, for example, on credentialing. And so just listening and saying, okay, well, tell me more about that. And being able to then get back with ICMA home base and be able to say, here's what I heard. Here's where I think that this may be able to be worked out. And here, let me connect. Right. Um, Another member, and, I'll remember this, he was a character in Iowa. But anyway, he was supposed to receive his award in 2024, but his wife got COVID, and he mentioned something this when he made the award. His wife got COVID, so he wasn't able to go, and everybody loved him there in Iowa, and it's like, well, okay, well, let me just find out if that's something we can accommodate for you in Tampa. Right? Here's somebody who served our association, or served our members, or served their communities for 40 plus years, right? And because of an illness, wasn't able to really, be recognized for that. Well, you know what? Jeremy and Julia and the team, they figured out, okay, let's go ahead and recognize him there. And I know those are little stories, but to your point about listening, um, as I've gone around, I was just in Alaska a couple of weeks ago, and when I say this, I mean this in a very positive way. They are phenomenal people, and they are tough, right? I mean, their environment and their circumstances, the what's going on as far as their revenues and expenditures and their isolation. I mean, there are communities there, lots of communities there that have no roads going into them. They're only accessible by small planes. And oh, by the way, 100 days out of the year, we can't even fly a small plane in. A gallon of gas is $17 to $18 a gallon, and a half a gallon of ice cream is $60 or $70. I mean, they're dealing with real issues. 80% of the time, they may not have electricity, and they've got to run off generators. And oh, by the way, how do I get the fuel? Um, and that's our members, right? From one side to the other. And so hearing those stories and then being able to translate that when I go and talk to other members and listen and be able to tell the stories, what I have found is that our members want to know they're not alone. They are, and that came out very true in Alaska, especially, when your closest town is 1,000 miles away, right? It's not like you're going to have lunch with your neighbor the next day. Um, but they not feeling isolated, feeling connected, having those relationships. So when you ask that question, that's what I'm trying to listen for, and how to promote. How do we build stronger relationships? Because it takes the collective strength to do what we do, right? I've said it before. Like, who chooses to do a profession in which Monday morning quarterback is 24/7, right?
Mhm.
I mean, it just is. I mean, you've been through
Yeah.
it.
Oh, yeah.
And
Mhm.
it takes a special kind of person to be able to do this job, I believe. And it comes from inside, it comes from the heart. And with that, then you're able to serve others first. Now, we all have different personalities, from meek to AAA personalities and everything along those lines. But at the end of the day, we're in service to other people, right? It's not about us, it's about the people we serve. And so I don't mean to get preachy, but that's how I feel. That allows me then when I go out and I talk to our members, sometimes I get, 10, 15 minutes just to kind of give this little talk that I give of encouragement, because I truly believe it. That's what I believe, to your point, why I am where I am right now, right? Because we are in such a transition with ICMA and hiring Julia that we're trying to make sure our foundation is solid. And so there's not like these new programs and new things and shiny, nickels and all that kind of stuff. It's like making sure our foundation is, we're established, we're set, so that then we can take off and go to the next level. So I'm really excited about where we are. Tanya and that board that just finished had some tough issues. I know I was on there too, but we had some tough issues that we had to deal with. We dealt with it. We set ourselves up, and now we're looking forward to the success of the future with our members in mind first.
So, as you talked both about your service to professional organizations and your own career, there's a sentiment that you've often been in the right place at the right time. And with ICMA, maybe it felt like that, maybe it didn't, right? The COVID years were not fun for anyone, more or less trying to run an organization who's trying to serve a membership, who's trying to figure out what tomorrow may or may not even look like. And
Right.
then talking about kind of the organizational change, that ICMA leadership change, but also the change of the profession, right? No one thought overnight that ICMA was going to have to shut down entire service areas because the
Mm.
funding just disappeared
Right.
one day. There was
Right.
there was no grand congressional conversation. It was here yesterday and gone tomorrow. And so I think of both of your terms of service to ICMA as maybe it doesn't always feel like right place, right time, but those are really transformative moments in the profession's kind of arc, but also
Right.
the organization's future. And so can you talk a little bit more from that lens?
Sure. So I'll go back. So those 3 years, basically we had not quite a full year of being able to meet in person, and then COVID hit, and then we went to virtual, and that was completely new. ICMA had never done that before, right? And all of our organizations hadn't done that before. So there was COVID. So can anybody name at the university level or the MPA program that taught us what we were supposed to do? And when you have a pandemic going on, and you have states that are dealing with the pandemic differently, and you had, in the states, you had counties and cities doing things differently. So you had members that were just right. It's like, okay, what? Then you had the George Floyd murder, right? Then so you had that civil unrest going on, and then you had the 20 election where I know we had lines, hours of folks that were coming out and voting. So during that 3 years, take those three things into account. And I don't know if y'all remember or not, but one of the things I had done with the board was started doing some book studies, and one of the book studies had to do with Robin DiAngelo's book. And if you remember, we did a virtual, and for whatever reason, I was asked to facilitate that conversation with her. And I know in Texas and in other places around the country, there were people very upset about that. And one of the things I said at the time is, if we are to be thought leaders, then there are different perspectives that need to be talked about. We need to have the difficult conversations. And we have members who, maybe in your community, this is not an issue, but we have members who this is absolutely an issue. And we serve 14,500 members in that various many communities, right? And so that was a transformative time for ICMA for a different reason. So now you fast forward. Um, I say this a little bit with a smile. You know, this year, uh, we have the election. We have, oh, by the way, there was the January 6th situation, you know, back then too, and a lot of things were coming out of that. And then this year we have the election, and within a very short period of time, we have the executive orders that are just coming out, you know, like machines. And we have members. So here's the deal. We have members that are having to deal with something way worse than what we were having to do with from a funding standpoint, right? And so ICMA, at the time that we brought Julia on board, had to jump into an arena of helping members while at the same time facing financial severe reductions or cuts. So how do we provide services? So there were a lot of questions about how do we provide services to our members at the same time while we're having to also do reductions. And so, you know, USAID, um, I think at the time I think it was around 50 some odd folks across the globe had to be let go just because the money just stopped immediately. There was no revenue for them. So there's a personal side to that, and there's also the service side to that, the people that was being impacted. And you fast forward, and those reductions and cuts have continued on. And for us as an organization, you know, bringing Julia on board, what she has brought is because of her private sector business expertise, her perspective, and the way that she looks at things, combined with the board's understanding that it's not the same model that we used to have, it has allowed us to pivot. It's allowed us to be flexible, and it's allowed us to advance those things that are really important to our members. Because guess what? We're listening to our members. We're hearing what it is that our members want. We hear what they need. You know, excuse me. There was the program. My mind just went a little bit blank because the hurricane that went up through Florida, up into the North Carolinas and Asheville and everything along those lines. Um, you know, we put on some sessions that were specific to those areas about how to access the FEMA funds and how to, you know, do the kinds of things that need to be done. So we have to, as an organization, meaning the ICMA, has to be flexible enough and nimble enough that when that particular issue comes up, we need to know that we've got the resources to be able to target so that we can help our members in those particular situations. So I'm hoping I'm answering your question in the sense that it is a partnership between the members, the organization, and the board. And we have to listen really carefully. It's not the members who need to be putting on the programs. And I say that in a special way, but those members have experiences that, hey, can we pull you in to share your experiences so that members are hearing it peer to peer by practitioners? It's not theoretical. It's not anything academic, even though there's value there. So anyway, that's how this transformation has gone when you think about what happened between the COVID years and where we are now. um, I don't think any of us, if we think back to our school days, and Corri, you know, you just finished getting your doctorate. I don't think any of us had on the checklist of things. I want to make sure I learn about this and this and this and you know, no. But because we have the right mindset, a growth mindset, because we have the right heart, right, from an empathetic heart, it allows us to be able to serve our communities. As long as we've got those two things in line, we're going to do great things for our community.
So, Mike, thanks first of all for it was a wide ranging area of like acknowledgement of the difficulties really of the last decade, right? And I think all of us, as we navigated COVID, we're trying to navigate it as best as we could with the tools that we had at our disposal. And the interesting part was every time you got used to a tool in the toolbox, somebody would come to the toolbox and steal it. And then you didn't have that tool anymore. So
Right.
now you had to learn how to do what you were doing with a different tool. And I think that really articulates the struggle that ICMA went through in a time where our members were dealing with a series of issues that none of us had the right tool for. And that, you were in a space, and Corri was too, where you're in these leadership roles of trying to rush the tool to the right people at a time where you didn't know if it was the right tool, but it was there. So you tried it. So I just want to acknowledge that that was a really difficult time to navigate through, and that you were in a space of having raised your hand and participated in it. I'm not sure how much gratitude you get for it, but I'm here to say thank you to you for actually trying to find and navigate through a difficult time. And I want to kind of pivot toward something that you've talked about, and that I kind of see woven through the way you kind of respond to ICMA and our members and all of that. But that is kind of this ethos of gratitude. Um, when I was president of ILCMA and having conversations face to face with folks, I would frequently thank them for whatever it was that we were talking about. Thank you for sharing that with me. Thank you for your service. Thanks for volunteering. Thanks for raising your hand, that kind of thing. And what people often would say to me is, you're the first person that's ever thanked me for that. Like, we don't really thank each other for supporting the profession, for supporting each other, for supporting an individual. And what I love about so many of the posts that you push out on LinkedIn, or the comments that you've made to ICMA, is that you always interweave in there kind of this perspective of thank you for what you do. Thank you for the service that you provide to your community. Thank you for what you're doing for our association. And I think, that comes from somewhere. So I guess my question to you is a very long-winded question, sorry, is where does that perspective of um, being grateful to those around you come from? What's that rooted in?
Um, it's a great question. My lead, it's my belief, my faith. Um, you know, um, we're in a daily walk, and this is going to sound so. You people say, I thank Jesus and thank Christ and thank God, and absolutely, I want to do all that because every day it's a blessing. I woke up today, thank God that I did that. Um, but I took on a perspective when I was younger that I don't always live up to this standard. But when people say um, view things through the eyes of Jesus, I don't know how else to say it. But as I go through a daily walk, my personal mission statement, if you will, my personal purpose statement is to be the light. That's when I started narrowing it down and everything, first of all, my memory's terrible. So if it had more than 5 or 6 words, I wasn't going to remember it anyway. And it was supposed to be my purpose statement. But when it all boiled down to, it was be the light. So to your question, and being the light is, I truly believe that as someone who has looked to and looked at and observed, uh, as a leader of my organization, as a leader with ICMA, that if I am not fulfilling who I am as being the light, then I'm not being authentic. And so the idea of being the light is giving thanks in all that I am blessed with, and all that I am faced with, and all whatever it is that's coming at me, I view that first as a blessing, and then how am I going to demonstrate Christ, and then how am I going to help this person be the absolute best person in whatever it is that they're doing. And if someone is coming to me in pain, acknowledging their pain and acknowledging it's important to them. It may not necessarily be something that I would think is necessarily important, but to that person, I need to be present with that person and understand why that is such a painful situation that they're dealing with. And I use that with our citizens on a regular basis, that have some pain point. And it's like, okay, help me understand that first, and then let's work towards a solution. The answer still may be no, but there may be some other ways around it that we can get there. So I hope that answers the question, but it really comes from a deep faith.
So I want to pull at that and a couple of things that you talked about. So you said growth mindset. You talked about being a coach. You talked about being the light. And I think that reflects probably your leadership and management style. So as you've kind of woven your way through your career, how do you work with growing the talent that serves your organization? Because part of being the ICMA president, you talked about traveling to Alaska, but I'm guessing there are a dozen more conferences. And so your service is going to be very external, which means the city has to run without you there every day. And I suspect that means you have a fantastic group of people who are behind you supporting the community.
Yeah, let me start with first, I have an extremely supportive city council. When I had five, I would have had all of them there had not they had previous, but I had five of my council members and the mayor in Tampa who wanted to be there to support me. And even now they tease me now when they see me, they don't even say my name. They say, "Hey, Prez." It's just like, please don't do that. I mean, it turns out what's going on. But anyway, so they're extremely supportive. And we had a long talk when I put my name in the hat because I told them I was going to be traveling quite a bit. And they were extremely supportive. They were supportive because we have such a strong team here, right? And that strong team steps up every day, whether I'm here or not. And oh, by the way, um, we are all connected. I hope that was a good song. Hold on just a minute. So, uh, uh, I am connected even when when I'm gone at these conferences and everything along those lines. But I've got a great team. This culture that we have built in Capel started back in the late 90s. And so it is, core to who we are, the hedgehog, building community through public service. Hedgie was at the Tampa conference, and I didn't know the mayor was going to bring that out. Um, but I take it with me at every state conference, and he was in the mountains in Alaska last week. But um, it's a great team. Uh, we start if you just let me just do a little commercial for how we do it. We start with personal leadership development. We call it PLD. Then we do effective leadership development. So every employee that we have has gone through or will go through, if they're new, what the PLD, which is Covey 7 habits, because it starts with the person, right? And those habits. And then we build on that consistently throughout our organization. We are a learning organization. Um, and from a culture standpoint, if anybody ever comes in, we invite folks, and people come to our organization. They'll spend a day with us. They'll spend a day with our leadership team, and I let them loose because I'm so confident in the culture that we have. And so when they come back and talk and they say, well, this is what I saw today, the words, the language, the vocabulary, the actions, the behavior, everything about it is centered on, our three anchors, our building community, permission and horsepower. So that's who we are. So that allows me to do the traveling. And I told my team, you talk about what's getting ready to happen. Um, Basically, about 3 weeks out of every four between now and the end of June, I will be gone for the majority of the week. And like I said, I have tremendous support from the council. I miss a few council meetings, and that's okay. My team, Tracy and Kent, do a phenomenal job, and the council's confident in them. There's tremendous trust between us and the community and the council. So It's been a pure pleasure. I am not stressed by this at all. The most stress I get is if the plane starts jumping up and down like it did when we were landing in Anchorage. But other than that, it's been a great experience, and my team is extremely supportive. As a matter of fact, I do it's called Open Mic with Mike every month with Mike. I open it up to the entire organization, and they always want to hear about my travels. They want to hear about what's going on in other states, what's happening in other cities, and what can I bring back here that we can take advantage of. And so it's been a learning experience for me for our organization that I share with the organization and with the council. I teased the mayor the other day because we had the opportunity to go to Solace, was in Leeds, and mayorship, and the mayor's wife has a title, and there's all this regalia and everything along those
Yep.
lines. It's like, no, you're not getting any of it, but I just want you to know that they're out there. Um, so you know, so anyway, it's been a great experience, and the team does phenomenally. And never mind the hour changes, but this allows me to stay connected, right? I talk to the mayor even when I'm on the trip. Even I talk to the mayor every day, sometimes twice a day. That's by his, choice in our routine. I have check-ins with Kent and Tracy every day while I'm gone. So we keep that line of communication. That's the secret. We keep the line of communication open the entire time. So it's all been good. We had to purposely be disciplined in what we do.
Mike, I think it's one of the points that I think is so interesting is how your team wants to know about your travels and what you've learned and what you've seen. And that just to me signifies kind of this curiosity that is so important in kind of getting it right when we're talking about the work and we're talking about some of those staff members, Capella is going to be their world, right? And they're saying to you, hey, how does our world compare to the other places that you've been, and what are the things that are out there that you've seen that you think maybe we should think about? And
Right.
I will tell you, I think that's the most impactful part of what ICMA is, right? It is the ability for all of us to come together when we're at a conference, for instance, for all of us to come together and kind of acknowledge that our little corner of the world is obviously the most important corner of the world to us, but it's not the only corner of the world. And we have so much that we can learn and derive from the the experiences and the worlds of others. And so I
Right.
love that your team is curious about that, because I think that's often maybe the critique of the ICMA president is that you're globe trotting and you're hopping from place to place, and you're um, maybe ignoring what your own community needs. But your point is, I'm engaged, I'm part of it, I'm still engaged, and the benefit of having technology is that you can stay connected,
Right.
but you're also having this very unique opportunity to just bring this all back to your team. And what a blessing that is. And I know I'm thrilled to hear that your team's excited about that. That's just fun.
Yeah. Can I build on that just for a moment?
Yeah,
Um,
please.
so a lot of folks know Opal, who's the city manager in Lancaster. Who, by
Okay.
the way, would be a great person for y'all to have on the podcast. So accomplished. She's an amazing woman. And well, anyway, um, Opal has created a partnership with Manzini Eswatini. And so the Global Exchange was in Eswatini in South Africa this past year. And because of that relationship, we are starting in 2026 a relationship with a community in Eswatini, and we're going to do a book study with them, Thinking Fast and Slow. And while we were there, one of the things that was just amazing and so apparent and just made you just fall in love with the folks that were there, and it makes you fall in love with the folks who are our members too. they are so thirsty for what ICMA has to offer, and they're trying to do the right things in a emerging economy. There are challenges, right? And there's the pros and cons and all this kind of good stuff. Um, but my point being is that as members, again, as I travel, there is just really a thirst for this connection, for relationship building, and for professional development. And uh, this while we were in Tampa, the energy level in Tampa was through the roof. Regarding the membership and the conference itself, and the speakers that we had, and um, so all of us as board members were just so thrilled and excited to be able to be a part of that. And it helped springboard us now into 2026 to do some of the things that we're doing, and the travels that we're going on. And so let me say this: traveling is not glamorous. Going to the States is awesome. The people there are so the hospitality is through the roof. Um, they give us some time just to address the members and everything like that. But we spend the rest of the time. Look, I got more professional hours in for my credentialing that I could stop, after about the third or fourth one. I haven't quite figured. Matter of fact, I was working on it before, because mine's due at the end of the year. Before we got on the line, it was like, well, do I put down all these places that I went, because I sit through all these conferences? I've gotten more ethics training. Let me tell you, I've
Yeah,
gotten more
right,
ethics
man. Yes.
training, which is also encouraging that all the state associations are doing something, around
Yeah.
ethics and everything. So anyway, but it's been a pure pleasure. And, I know I hear it too, the teasing, well, you're just traveling around and everything like that. I'm traveling around because our membership is all
Right.
over.
Right.
Right? And Tanya is traveling, and Andy's traveling, and Julia's traveling, and we have regional directors who are traveling. It's because we need to be hearing from our members. What do you need from ICMA? What do you need to develop from a professional standpoint? And how can we help you connect and build relationship so that you and your family are being taken care of? So I'm going to always come back to that. That's why we're traveling. We are not traveling because it's like, boy, I'm so excited that I get to go to X, Y, and Z, because that means I get to sit in the airport. Look, flying to Anchorage, Alaska, I could have gone to London for as much time as I spent in the plane,
Yep.
right? And Anchorage
Yep.
was great. So I'm not trying to say that. It's just this, like, y'all, spending all that time in the plane is not all those that's cracked up to be. Let me tell you.
Well, and Mike, I will tell you, speaking from the state association perspective, when the ICMA president or the president-elect or the past president, or frankly, any member of the board shows up at our conferences, suddenly it's like, oh my gosh, the ICMA person is here, and they're here for us. And I will tell you, in the last 5 or so years, we have seen in Illinois just more traffic from the ICMA board, and it is so incredibly meaningful. And I will shout down the voices of people who say, "Oh, it's just fun." You know what? I have seen ICMA board members be in very, very complicated conversations with members of the Illinois folks,
Right.
who have taken the opportunity to say, "Hey, you're here. I have some thoughts. I want to share those thoughts with you. They may not be comfortable for you to hear, but you're here and you're going to hear them."
Yeah.
And those voices are listened to. And again, I will shout down the voices who say, "Oh, this isn't appropriate. It's not the way it's supposed to go." It's exactly how it's supposed to go. So thank you for doing it.
Yeah.
Thank you for continuing that tradition, because it is meaningful and it does have an impact.
Yeah, absolutely. I will tell you, I was surrounded in Georgia by folks who were not happy with credentialing in the process. And so I communicated that back up the chain to Julia, and she carried that message when the credentialing folks got together. So yes, there are conversations they're important conversations. It's not all happy and all this kind of stuff. It's like for our members, there's some serious matters that they want to have addressed. And so, yeah, absolutely.
So, in your narrative, there was a little hidden triangle, and you talked about the importance of kind of teamwork and trust between you and your team, the council, and the community. And I think it's not a secret that not everybody has that right now. And you've
Mm-hmm.
probably heard that across your
Oh,
travels, and we've
yeah.
seen it in the message boards. And so, what is your secret to success in the community you're in now? And what has it been as you've worked through your career? Because I suspect it's a skill, it's a science, it's an art, and the world has gotten less civil, less kind in general. But to have a community where that triangle is intact and supportive, I think is magical, and it would be helpful for people to hear kind of how you build something like that.
Sure. Again, I'll use stories if you don't mind. When I was in Gainesville, which is north of Dallas, a small community, blue collar, working class community, um, socioeconomically kind of all over the map and everything. One of the things that we did is we called it kind of block by block. We had just gotten started with it, and literally we made arrangements and went into people's homes and invited their neighbors and just asked the question, what do you need to be successful, right? What can we do as a community, from as making sure that the darn street light on the corner is on, or the stop signs in place, or the code compliance, but it was their block. What can we do in their block? And so it really was building it on a very personal relationship standpoint. Um, so you go forward, and what are things that you can do that, I know this sounds a little bit simple, but building a community playground, right? When you bring people in, and y'all know who the major kind of contractors are, the designers are that do that. When you bring people together on something that's positive for the community, and the more that you can do that, the more you build trust between the community and the organization and the elected officials. When I got to Capel, one of the things about Capel in 2010, I think our Southeastern Asian Indian population was around less than 10%. In 2020, it was about 25%. By 2040, it's supposed to be 40%. So here we had a conversation going on in our organization about our communities changing. Our community recognizes that it's changing. So what are we going to do about it, right? Knowing that it's going to change some more. So we created this program we called Allies in Community, and that has now morphed into what we call One Capel, and it brings our organization, members of our team, together with members of our community and elected officials. And this year we're doing something called Together We Dine. And all it is about having conversations, finding the common ground. I know that sounds so simple, but we're the facilitators. Much like Corey, you said you're a facilitator for this conversation. We're the facilitators. And so we have to have our eyes open and our hearts open to taking some risk, putting people together that may not A, know each other, or be diametrically opposed on something, whatever it is, but put them in situations where they can have just a conversation, right? Why do we have to wait till there's some issue that's going to try to divide the community? Do your homework in advance. Build the strength of the community so that when they do come together and they kind of look across the aisle and it's like, well, gosh, I had dinner with you 2 nights ago or 2 weeks ago. You're a good person. It's not, we have just different ideas. Well, let's talk about the idea, not about the person. Um, when I'll use this another story again. When I was in Anchorage listening to the folks in Alaska, they were talking about these communities that had 300 people or 400 people in these isolated communities, and they live in Facebook, right? And it was like, okay, that's maybe how they live, but by the way, you're a small community and you knows each other, right? So turn off Facebook, right? Don't don't watch it, because that's all that's going to do is stir up all these thoughts and ideas and mind games and telling stories in your head and everything like those. I'm not on Facebook. Look, Phil, I will tell you, it was a push to get me on LinkedIn. because I was kind of reluctant to do that, but I had some folks that said, "Look, Mike, you're going to be president of ICMA. It's an opportunity for you to kind of talk a little bit about some of the things that are going on, and I've got some series that I've got going on, but um, it really is. I'm pulling it back down to it's just about the relationships, Corey. I mean, that's what it is. Now, Coppell, we call it the Coppell bubble. There's been a tremendous amount of stability. There was one real serious issue that happened in the early 2010, 2011, and the community ended up rallying around that particular situation. It was very sad, tragic. Um, but the elected officials, the community, um, everybody's striving to be the very best. Excellence is the expectation, not perfection. Knowing how we behave. Our community knows how we should behave because we tell them how we should behave. And what we ask in return, because of this one Capel, how do we behave as a community? So it's not a one-way street. And our elected officials are extremely supportive of that. And our elected officials, they don't always agree on everything, but they handle themselves extremely professionally, right? They focus on the issue, not the person. And that allows us as a community. I know that that's not, there are certain community, we all know them. We see them we see them posted and everything along those lines where, it's a dog-eat-dog world and everything along those lines. And for those city managers or county managers in those situations, I know how painful that's got to be for them to be in that particular position, when those folks are doing it. My encouragement would be, as hard as it is, how do you find a way to find a path to get any kind of alignment? But our personalities get in the way, our personal pride gets in the way. And somehow or another, this idea of which is kind of what I'm on right now, this creating this rising community, this thriving community, this flourishing community. What does it take to make that happen? And when you're off kilter, then the question becomes, what are we trying to accomplish, right? And those are hard conversations for city managers to have. Absolutely. But those are the conversations. And I would say to you, I think that's part of the challenge for ICMA right now. When I go out and visit the states, what you're describing, people are looking to ICMA, and I'm telling you, we're having this discussion. I just don't have an answer, but they're looking to ICMA at how to navigate, how to be apolitical, follow our ethics, but yet have a voice, right? And man, that is really tough. And for those, when John spoke, he talked a little bit about that and how to maybe work our way through that. And I think Julia's got some ideas about how we can position ICMA to help people in that area, but it's going to take a little time to do that. So I feel like I'm long-winded on my answer, so I apologize.
No, I think that was great, Mike. I think that point at the end there is particularly present, and I think the struggle right now is to find the right thing to say for communities that are struggling and communities that are in a place of, I don't know what to do. What should we do? And I feel like, and this is something that again I derive from the comments that you have shared tonight. You kind of lean back into your humanity, right? What is it that we do this for? We do it so that others are made better, so that communities are stronger because of our influence. And I think being your authentic self and being a human and kind of expressing that with other people of, look, it isn't about red, blue, right, left. It's about how do we make sure that the services that we're providing are as good as they can be for as many as possible, right? That kind of uniformity of service. It's one of the things, every conversation I have with folks who are like, I'm not really sure what you do. What's this city manager thing? What's that for? And I always say it's to make sure that we are listening, hearing, and acting for the greater good for everybody, not just for a few people.
Right.
It's real easy to fall into that, right? And those few people are often the loudest people, but they're often really just a few. And what we're here for is to make sure that the water flows in the morning when they turn the shower on, and that if you flush a toilet, it goes somewhere
Goes
else.
away. Right.
And when you need some help, that fire department showing up or the police department is there to make you feel safe, and public works is plowing the streets. Yeah, those kinds of things, they feel very simple, but they're not. And their quality of life, they are the things that make a community livable.
Hmm.
Um, and so leaning back on that humanity of it is so important when people really want to push you into a corner and say, what do you think about this thing? And right, and that's the space none of us really ever want to occupy.
Right.
I've never found it fun. The idea of running for office has never been exciting to me. At the same time, we work for the people who do, and who do
Right.
perhaps see that as exciting, and it puts us into a tough spot. So I appreciate your approach to not necessarily tilting at windmills, right? This is about listening, learning, acting as equitably and thoughtfully as possible to as many people as possible. And I think that encapsulates what we do as city
Right.
managers as good as anything. Hey, so you have had to talk a lot. One of the things that we like to try to do and this is usually Mike's little shtick, but he's not
Okay.
here. So I'm gonna carry the water on his behalf, which is to turn the microphone back to you and say, hey, do you have questions that you want to throw at us that are maybe complicated, difficult, or easy? I'm all about easy. So if you want to throw an easy question our way, that's great.
Throw
But
some
we like
softballs
we
your
like
way.
to. This is a two-way ship, right? And we're not just forcing you to answer our questions.
So I'll ask you first, and I have a question for Corey, but I'll ask you first. When do you find time to do all the posting that you do? What's your discipline? How are you disciplined and intentional to make sure? Because their goal for me was once a week. And it's like, okay, I know it's not that difficult, but it really is actually very difficult for me to do that. So tell me about what your secret is.
It's a great question, and I'll tell you, I don't have secrets about it. It is for me finding the interest in whatever it is that I'm sitting through, and I will frequently, people are like, "Oh, you must pre-program all of your stuff so that it populates your feed just at the right time." I'm like, "Is that a thing that people do? Because I
Can you
certainly
do
don't."
that? Wait.
I'd love to do that if that
Yeah.
was a thing, but it doesn't work for me. Honestly, a lot of my posting is almost kind of, it comes to me in a conversation or an experience or something I've read or some other something, and I really look at it as a way to say, look, let's shine a little bit of light on this aspect of city management, or let's shine a little bit of light on this aspect of my organization, or
Mhm.
let's shine a little bit of light on this thing that I've been noodling over for a while. And how can we just how can I have a chance to just kind of throw an idea out into the metasphere and
Mhm.
see what people find value in it. And for me, it has been such a uplifting experience. I will tell you, you're right. The Facebook group world, that's a ugh. But I have found so much community in LinkedIn and in Tampa, having
Mhm.
meeting people for the first time in real life, who I have had the experience of getting to know virtually, has been such a joy.
Right. Right.
And I will tell you, I don't know. I'm not interesting. I'm not fascinating. And if you ask me, I'm the least interesting person you'll ever meet. And to think that people actually find value in something that I think is interesting is really just kind of a foreign concept to me. But at the same time, I've just appreciated the connections made. And I've said this before. One of the reasons that Corri, Mike, and I are doing this podcast in the first place is because Corri and I kind of linked up through LinkedIn, and the chance to just kind of get to know one another through a virtual medium seems so unique, and yet it's such a part of what we are today. So that's my story. I'm sticking to it. It's not, there's not a lot of
That's
science
good.
behind it,
You do
but
a
it
great
is fun.
job on your postings and everything. So yeah, very
Thank you.
good. It's timely as well. That's the part that gets me. Is like, dang it. So Corri, you went after your PhD, um, and since that time, what has now? Because I get the impression in watching and listening to you and knowing you is like there's something next. And do you already know what the next is? Or you're going to kind of sit with this for a little bit?
Is both and an answer.
Okay.
So yes and yes. No, e- the the people who knew what my transition was like, and I remember talking to recruiters the first few months, and I knew I wasn't ready to even entertain the conversation. And I've been blessed to be in a position to take time to, to sucker these two into doing a podcast with me because it gave me something to do and a
Uh-huh.
way to stay connected to the profession, which I love, but I probably won't go back in the chair, or
Uh-huh.
at least not for a long time. And so I defended my dissertation on April 1st, which seemed so karmic in so many ways. And, got my doctorate in May. And I really wanted to spend time being a mom.
Okay.
I'm a single mom. My son just turned 13, and he'll never remember this, but I will. You talked about 2020 and the things that went on. Well, we had a night in the community here where we had a protest, a Floyd protest, and it was peaceful during the day. And then at night, things changed, and there were homicides and officer involved shootings, and we put the community on lockdown. And that first night, I literally left my son a note on the hallway floor and texted my next door neighbor and said, I'll be at the EOC. I don't know when I'll be home.
Um,
And he won't remember that. He was younger, but now I have this magical time while he's a teenager. But I get to take him to school every day, and he still likes me for, the next year or two, whatever it's going to be. But what I've actually been doing, and Phil knows this because he's been a guinea pig for me, is I spent the fall writing a book. And so I'm going through the editing phase of that now, and it'll get
oh,
published next
right.
year. Yeah. So that's been the fun thing. It's been really fascinating to do. And then I'll consult when the right situations come. I think, and we've talked about it a lot on the podcast, we're living on the precipice of major disruption, right? We talked about it from the lens of ICMA and USAID and all the executive orders. But you think about AI and where it's headed. If ChatGPT is where it is today, on the same trajectory as where Twitter was when they announced the retweet, and think about
Mhm.
how the spectrum of technology changes, life is going to look fundamentally different 5 years from now. It just is. And I think that's going to create a lot of opportunity to help people see things differently, do things differently. Leadership's going to look differently. And so there's a little bit of I'm doing things I've always wanted to do. I'm doing a few things I never expected to want to do, but I am loving every minute of it. And I'm going to trust the universe to bring me what's next when it's the right time.
Right. That's awesome. Thank you. I, as I was listening to both of you, um, you know, I do the daily DJ Poppy with my grandkids, and having that connection, even though I'm distant, is extremely important. You're talking about the connection with your kids. Um, Mike, so when we were in Tampa, I'll just share this story real quick. When we were in Tampa, all my kids were there and everything. And it was kind of the first time that we really had this discussion about what they remembered really when I was serving as city manager and, being gone and, the things that they remembered whenever we had a tornado warning, had to go to the EOC. My wife would like go pop popcorn and put the kids with pillows in the stairwell, under the stairwell in the closet and have a popcorn party. And, they don't remember me being gone that much at night. And so the things that you would concern yourself with, it was like, the kids are so resilient. So to your point, your son, they're so much more resilient than we maybe give him credit for. But, so anyway, so I just share that story with you because as you're talking about your son remembering the note on the floor, it's like, yeah, that brings back memories about things that we do with our kids. So yeah, it's great. Good. I those are
I,
my two questions.
those are they were great questions, Mike. I would just point one other comment relative to the kids. They're so proud of you, Mike. They're so proud of you, Corri. I think my kids are proud of me. I've had these unique conversations, and my daughter will be 10 next week, and my other daughter is 7. And they absorb it. They see the point of the work. They see and they understand, and maybe they don't understand all the pieces and parts and the
Right.
politics and the crazy but they know why. They get that. And I would say to both of you, your children are so damn proud of the work that you've done and the effort that you've put into it. And that's why they don't remember that you weren't there, because
Right.
they know that you were doing something that made them safer, that made their community better, that helped. And I think that's just for me, a bit of a reassurance that, yes, I won't be there for every moment, but I'll be there for as many moments as I can be. And I know at the end of it, they're still going to think that it was it was time well spent on my part, because the community relies on the work that we do, right?
Yeah. You
So,
know, what to the add to that is that when I left Gainesville. So all my kids were babies or really young when we moved to Gainesville. When I left Gainesville, um, I only had one daughter that was still in high school. And in the room, one of the things that I told them, talking about gratitude and thank you, is that community helped raise my kids. And so, for all of our members, they're in communities and I think people lose sight of that sometimes, right? They think you're sitting in the office and everything like that. No, you're part of this community. You're either at church or you're at the store or you're at the park or you're in the school and you're part of this community. And that's why it means so much that you want the community to be so successful because they have a direct impact on who your family is. And, that was one of those things. So I'll say I made sure that I expressed that when I left Gainesville, that I am so thankful that they raised my family, together, that we were together. And, um, yeah, there again, I'm gonna go back to like I started on it's been a blessing. In the hardest times, it's still been a blessing. So, yeah, it's been good. It's been good. It's all been good.
well, Mike, I think we're probably rounding the finish line here.
Okay.
And I want to express my gratitude to you. As I said before, I always am so impressed by how gracious you are to all of those who support you and who support the profession and who support ICMA. And um, you've raised your hand, and maybe it was your time, maybe that's just the way the universe worked out, but
Right.
you're still the one who raised their hand. You're still the one who stepped into the role. You're still the one who's willing to listen to the and have the hard conversations and bring that back in an effort to make ICMA a better, more responsive, more um, considered organization for the 14,500 of us who rely on it. And I'm just grateful for you, and for the fact that you raised your hand to do that. That is not easy work. It's not easy to be away as much as you are and to do all the listening and talking that you do. So part one, thank you for that. Part two, this was a fantastic conversation. And from the standpoint of an audition, you're in. So, you know, we're going to share that with Sable. He's out. We have a new mic.
Okay.
We've got a new mic. It's, you did very well. And I say, you know, the less awareness that you have about the fact that you're in an audition, the better, because you don't have time to get nervous. So well done.
No.
Thank you for spending the time with us.
Y'all
it has been a real pleasure.
Yeah, y'all have done an awesome job. I'm going to close with a story. So here's a story.
Great.
I'm a 16-year-old kid. I'm working at Miss Baird's Bakery in Houston, Texas, in a thrift store. In the thrift store comes a woman, and a woman, she doesn't necessarily have enough, and this is a thrift store, so it's day-old bread, right? And so she said, "Can I see your palm?" And I was like, "Sure." And she looks at my palm and she says, "You know, what I see in your future is I see you being in front of a large group of people speaking and being in a role of leadership." And that's when I was 16 years old. I can tell you that when I'm in front of that 5,300 people in Tampa, I'm remembering that 16-year-old hearing a story by somebody, you know, looking at your palm and saying, "This is what you're going to do." So anyway, I've having the opportunity to speak with y'all and just have a conversation with y'all has been a great honor. So thank you for inviting me. Just so you'll know, I've only done one other podcast, I think. So thank you for the opportunity. So y'all are phenomenal people.
We appreciate that. And we seem to be on a trend of being the first or one of the first podcasts. I think we were Tanya's first podcast too.
Oh,
so
really?
we're gonna take the wins where they come. That is
That's
a
right.
great honor to be trusted to have conversations like this. But Mike, thank you for your service to the communities, to ICMA. We overlapped. My Mike Land story is we had one day, right? We did the 1 day overlap. But after the election got certified, you sent each of us in my class an email welcoming us to the board. And it was filled with gratitude. And when you've not yet met someone and you get a message like that, completely unsolicited, unexpected, it really sets the impression of the kind of person you're about to meet. And so that's my story of how I remembered meeting you.
Yeah. Well, thank you. I remember that as well.
Again, thank you, Mike. Thank you, Corri. This has been episode 20 of Authenticity FM. I can't believe we've gotten to episode 20. We weren't sure we would get to episode 10. And here we are. The sky's the limit. So happy holidays to everyone who is listening, watching, and we appreciate the time spent. Talk about a holiday gift to us. The fact that so many of you are willing to give us your time to listen and to engage is truly the most humbling of gifts that we could receive. So thank you for that. We look forward to many more wonderful, amazing conversations in 2026. Again, thank you to Mike Land, and Happy New Year, everyone.
Happy holidays, everyone.